So by some happenstance, I happen to have lipstick. It's not Sea Prism lipstick, and I ain't putting it on because I'm not good when it comes to applying makeup. So that's just going to go back in here for now for a prop for me to use later. So, we learned some more stuff about the Stussys. We learned some stuff possibly about Weevil, and we learned some stuff about some elders in this, and a little bit about some Vegapunks. So, I'm not going through the chapter moment by moment. I'm just going over the broad range of, like, this is what we learned about Stussy and Miss Balking. This is what we learned a little bit about Vegapunk and the satellites. And this is what we learned about, like, Weevil and then the Elder. Starting off with Stussy. So, chapter starts with just Lucci being straight up like, I don't know what this thing is, kill it. And then he just, like, attacks Stussy, which I just find funny. Admittedly, I don't blame him. She did technically just drop with, like, one bite his... Do you think Stussy, Lucci consider... Yeah, Stussy, Lucci. Do you think Lucci considers Kaku his best friend? Well, you know, besides Hatori, of course, because Hatori is clearly his best friend. But is, like, Kaku, like, his next best friend or something? Where do you think that falls? But, Stussy just dropped Kaku, like a newborn giraffe, literally. And he's down. Giraffe Boy is down. And so I can't blame him for instantly being like, okay, this isn't right, and attacks her. She just uses the after image. It's called, it's a new paper body art. I think it's Kamiye, I think is what that one is. That's just called Heartbreak After Image, which it leaves an image of her in its wake, and then that's what Lucci ends up attacking. Which I was trying to think, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Nami basically has that with her, Mirage Tempo and stuff like that with her Fata Morgana. And then I think there's several of, there's lots of other characters in other anime that have like a similar ability where it's just like there's an after image of them left when they move and stuff like that. There's a character in Bleach, I think, that can do that they just move so fast that it looks like they're in two places at once, or they can move so fast that there's still like an image left behind. Lucci attacks that, and that fails. Then Stussy pulls out her lipstick, which I literally just finished watching the whole Cake Island arc in the anime, and I'm like, no, I don't think I do not recall at all seeing Stussy pull out anything that was lipstick based in that entire arc. I don't remember her pulling anything out to like just adjust her lips or anything like that. And we didn't see her do that at Marie Joie during, the Reverie arc and stuff like that. I just started the Wano arc in the anime. So I'm just going to slowly work my way through that. And get all, as far caught up on the English dub of that as I can. But, when it comes to Stussy, we haven't seen her use that before. And she pulls out her lipstick and she touches, she literally touches Lucci with it. He drops. She just bites his neck, which I just find so funny. Cat boy down. The cat boy is down, and Hatori is just like freaking out in the corner, which I find funny. And I like the fact that Stussy is just literally like, yeah, no, I couldn't have beat you guys in a head-on fight. I'm well aware of this. Why do you think I used underhanded tactics? We are literally trained assassins. Us using underhanded tactics is perfectly viable. So, I do not feel at all bad about using Sea Prism Stone to knock the both of you out. And then she changed them up somehow. So, the lipstick made me think of several things. First of all, clearly it's a reference to any of the other Sea Prism weapons that we've seen throughout One Piece. We've seen, of course, way back in Logtown, we, of course, met Smoker, and he had his staff, because I don't remember how to say the dang thing that has like the Sea Prism tip on it that he uses to like pin down Luffy, and Smoker can use it against different Devil Fruit users and stuff like that. Probably the most effective against Logias and stuff like that, like himself. But we see him use it against Luffy several times throughout that arc, and then we see throughout Logtown. when he's fighting Luffy, and then we see it. He has it with him pretty much the rest of the time. I know that Hancock at one point ends up breaking it at Marineford, but I do not remember. I'm pretty sure he got like it replaced or something like that, or got it fixed, because it's just like the tip of the staff that's supposed to be like Sea Prism Stone. Because we see him fighting with it later on at Punk Hazard. So I'm assuming it got fixed, some point in the 2-year time skip. Maybe Vegapunk fixed it himself. I don't know. Probably not, but something like that. Here, give me that stick. Here, it's fixed. This is like one of the Vegapunks. Here you go. What did you use? Sea Prism tape. Have it back. But the other things that it made me think of are, so I'm a big Doctor Who fan. There's a TARDIS underneath the hedgehog. And I've mentioned that in several other videos before, that I love Doctor Who. And in Doctor Who, there's a character called River Song, played amazingly by Alex Kingston. And she has hallucinogenic lipstick that she uses. It is lipstick that she can put on herself, and then whoever she kisses will then hallucinate something. Generally, it's hinted that she can somewhat control what they hallucinate. Sometimes it's like, oh, someone thinks she's still there while she's gone, and that's why she tends to escape out of the prison that she's held in. And then there's other ones where she like convinces an entire platoon of like Roman soldiers that she is Cleopatra, and that Julius Caesar has sent her there, or not Julius Caesar, Mark Antony has like sent her there, or whatever the case was. And like all of them think that she's Cleopatra. So yeah, she's good on that. And yeah, so we've seen her use her hallucinogenic lipstick several times throughout the story. I think she also has like a poison lipstick at one point that she uses against the Doctor at one point in time, and then saves him from it. But the other thing that I wanted to point out with River and with Stussy is that they are technically also both experiments done by a secret organization. Stussy was created by Mad. She's a clone, of course. We found this out in the last chapter. She is a clone of Miss Buckingham Stussy, who is, of course, Miss Balking, that we know now. And I'll get to the stuff that we kind of learned about Miss Balking in a little bit. But what we, Stussy was this experiment, and while Vegapunk considers her human, and I'm sure she herself considers herself human, along with possibly like Judge and Caesar and Queen may also consider her human. I don't know exactly, because we don't know where they fall on that one. Yes, I know Judge possibly saw Stussy at the wedding, but that doesn't mean that he clocked that was exactly who she is. He may not have, clocked that was, oh, that's Stussy. I remember her. Why is she here? But yeah, so Stussy was an experiment that turned out fine so far as we can tell. She was the first successful clone. That's what it said in the data card last time. But we don't know exactly if it was, oh, she is, she's fully human. She's genetically human, so that should be fine. Even though you're a clone, that doesn't mean that you're not like a human. Like, they've cloned sheep before, and the sheep was still considered a sheep. It's just a clone of another sheep. And, it's just because you're a clone doesn't mean that you're going to turn into the exact same thing that the other person ended up being. It's not that Stussy is going to end up being the exact same way that Miss Balking was. Stussy is also an experiment. Yes, she's a clone, and yes, she is considered human, but there's probably also a couple of other things that were done to, adjust her DNA. If it is the vampire devil fruit that a lot of people think it is, or a type of vampire devil fruit, or succubus devil fruit, as a lot of people are thinking, then there's, and if she has the ability to drain away people's, life energy to like replenish her own, and that's how she stays young, since we don't know Stussy's exact age. Although given the fact that I think Matt's was probably settled between 38 and 28 years ago range, just to give them time to build up, give Judge and Queen and Caesar time to make their scientific advancements, and for all of them to crack the lineage factor concept. We'll see how that goes. We'll hopefully get some more of that in the cover story, or just some more instantly of just Vegapunk or something telling us that. We'll see. Um, but River is also an experiment in Doctor Who. She's a child of the Doctor's best friends. If you have no idea what's going on with Doctor Who with me talking about this, just go watch the whole Matt Smith series and it'll be explained there. River Song is the daughter of the Doctor's two best friends, and she ends up getting taken from them and raised to become this like fully trained assassin type thing that is designed to kill the Doctor. She then falls in love with the Doctor, and eventually they end up getting married. She's also a Time Lord as well. If you want to figure that out, go and watch it. I'm still trying to figure parts of it out myself, but I love River Song. But yeah, so they're both experiments. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out that was lipstick based in Doctor Who is that there is a character called Sarah Jane Smith, rest in peace, Elizabeth Sladen. She was the actress that played the character. She has a sonic lipstick that was given to her by David Tennant's Doctor. Back when they were reunited, he gave her sonic lipstick for her to be able to use instead of his sonic screwdriver. So she has that. So I wanted to point those out. Stussy basically has revealed that she has been a mole instead of the world government for around 20 years, so probably around the same time that like Mads split up or so, or well, not quite that same time, but like a little while after. And that it was not Vegapunk's intention at all for her to go and join the world government, for her to become a mole or anything like that. That wasn't his intention. I'm sure that Vegapunk probably gave her, like, once she was, like, fully grown or whatever, depending on how long that took with the cloning and everything like that. We know Judge can raise a clone to, like, full, grown all the way grown up in, like, 5 years. But, Vegapunk back then, it may have been a bit different because Judge has probably perfected some of that cloning technology. Vegapunk has probably taken it even further at this point in time, but the Seraphim and everything. But with Stussy, it was probably she was raised in the lab, probably sees Vegapunk as a father. That's probably why her loyalty is to him. She may not really consider anything with Miss Bockeen. She may just be like, oh, she's the woman that I'm cloned from, and by technicality that makes her either like my mother or my sister type of a thing. But given what we learned about Miss Bockeen, she may not have had much of a hand in raising Stussy, or even if she did, Stussy may have ended up being closer to Vegapunk type of a thing. And I have a theory about that, but, that Vegapunk, that Stussy is just closer to Vegapunk and sees him more as her, like, maybe not like quite a father figure, but like an uncle or something like that, or maybe not the grandfather figure that Sentomaro sees him as, but like, you get the idea. And, she's like, Lucci and Kaku have been dealt with. They're fine. And then Vegapunk's like, okay, Stussy, we're going to leave the island soon. You're going to come with us, right? And she's just like, sure. And I love Usopp is just like, stop inviting people on our ship. We don't have that much room. Robin and Nami have their own room. And then all the rest of us boys have to, like, share a room, or however that ends up going, because you think Frankie would have made some of them their own rooms or something like that, way back when. Although Chopper could technically sleep in, like, his doctor room and, like, the little hospital room that they have there, but, and Zoro could always sleep in the crow's nest, where he's always training. They only have so much room on the ship, and now they're having Vegapunk come. Possibly all of the different satellite bodies as well, and possibly the Seraphim, depending on how things are going. So I don't know exactly what to say about that. But I love Usopp. He's like, stop inviting people on our ship. We don't have room. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that Sanji and Brook would both vote for having the sexy bat-winged lady to be around, to have her come with them. And depending on stuff, I'm sure that Robin would be like, well, she can turn into a demon too, so I'm somewhat interested in finding out what the heck she is. Particularly if they find out that she's a clone. Chopper would be somewhat interested in that, I'm pretty sure. Robin might be somewhat interested in it as well. And Frankie would just be like, I am perfectly fine with anybody else that has anything to do with Vegapunk being on our ship. What else we got? I like the satellites already, and the Seraphim look great. But one other note I wanted to point out is that technically that means that Stussy has been a spy within the world government for Vegapunk for the last 20 whatever years, or however many years she's been there, working her way possibly through the Cypher Pull agencies all the way up to Age of Zero and everything. to the point where she is now, and where she would be trusted enough by the world government by the celestial dragon, specifically by the Gorosei, to be sent to Egghead Island and to be trusted to protect the Tenryubito and such. So probably, has been there for a while. Probably, unfortunately, has had to do some underhanded things and stuff like that. Maybe she's been a little bit more lenient at times, and like what we've seen loosely. Yes, we saw her kill Dufeld, back in Whole Cake and everything, even though she has a past with him, considering that his, company was part of what funded Mads way back in the day. It could just be that, she just didn't like him to begin with, and he'd gone through and done a whole bunch of other bad stuff that she just doesn't approve of, and so she was fine with killing him to get the Tomato box, which still blew up, so it didn't matter. She didn't get that anyway. That got blown up, and bye-bye Whole Cake Chateau. But, so Stussy may or may not have too much affection for, him. She may not have any affection for, like, Judge or Caesar or Queen or anything at this point in time, given how far down the bad rabbit hole they went. But I did want to point out that, of course, throughout history, there's always been different spies and everything, and there's always been female spies. And, of course, I wanted to point out the most famous female spy of all time is Margareta Gertunda MacLeod. Highly doubt you have any idea who that is. That is Mata Hari. That is the legal name of the woman who was known as Mata Hari, that was this German spy in World War I. And she was this, I think she was just like Dutch courtesan, exotic dancer and stuff like that. And she ended up becoming a spy for the Germans, spying on, I think, the French. And she was eventually captured and executed and stuff, although it is admitted, it is somewhat thought that the French possibly troped up some of the charges just because, to find a reason to punish her and stuff like that. Not that she probably didn't do some of the stuff that she stated to have done, but it may not have been quite as bad as what they said. Then we cut to Sphinx Island, where we get to see that while Marco was away, gone to Wano and everything, that the Marines showed up on the island and they wanted, Whitebeard's treasure or everything, which is, of course, not there. He doesn't have treasure. He put the money into the village and everything like that. Marco explained this to us when he talked with, Nekomamushi way back before, just before Wano started. So, they show up there. They start threatening the children and the old ladies because this Marine is an asshole. Looks like Nezumi is not Nezumi, because I thought he looked like Nezumi, and I was just like, no, it's not him. It's someone else, as other people pointed out. But one of the things that I did like is that he's literally just like, well, I don't like that he's about to shoot an old lady, but he's about to hurt the old lady, and then just like out of nowhere, I'm going to be very funny to see how this happens in the anime, or when it gets to this point where it's just like, bam! Weevil comes out of nowhere and like whacks the guy with his Bicento and just sends him flying. That guy's either dead or going to be in a coma for a very long time. Either one is fine by me. He was threatening old ladies and children, so I am fine with that. He gets sent flying. I think it's like Rattlin or whatever his name is. He's based off of a rat. And that just made me think of Professor Ratigan from The Great Mouse Detective, that is a Disney movie from like the 1986 or 7 range. It's fun. It's Sherlock Holmes as a mouse. If you want to have an idea of what that is. But when Weevil just sends the bad Marine flying, and then all the rest of them leave because it's just like, oh my god, why is Weevil here? I thought the warlords were captured. Nope, none of them were captured. We all failed on that one. Because, Bo was still fine on her island. Yeah, she had to deal with Kobe and Blackbeard and stuff, but Rayleigh showed up and helped her. Buggy was saved by Crocodile and Mihawk, so Mihawk was already there, so that takes care of them. Law had already abdicated. Doflamingo was already in jail. I think we only had 5 warlords technically at that point in time. Who else did we have as warlords? because Crocodile wasn't a warlord at that point in time. Neither was Moria. Kuma was up in Marizwa at that point in time, so they didn't have to capture him. I think that's about it. For all the ones that actually still count as warlords at that point in time, because Jinbei was not a warlord for quite a while at that point in time anyway. So yeah. But yeah, so it's like, no, Weevil didn't get captured. He's here now and has Miss Bakken is there, and Weevil's like, I'm gonna protect my dad's village. I'm like, okay, you get points for that. You're here to protect the village. That's fine. Find out that Weevil, of course, protected the village, and then the Marines called in backup, and they brought in Ryukoko. Oh, they brought in Aramaki, and he captured Weevil, which would be an interesting fight. So we might get some flashes of that at some point in the anime. When we get to that, just try to see a little bit of like, just to see more of like how Aramaki fights and see Weevil battle against him. But we'll see what happens there. But yeah, Weevil was captured. So Marco is sitting there getting the update from like the people in the village about like what happened, and then Miss Bakken comes out and she goes like, "Yeah, so they captured my baby boy. I want my son back." Her beloved son. I do admit she does care about him. I will admit that. Which makes me think that okay, so we get a new info box for Miss Bakken. It is former member of the Rocks Pirates, self-proclaimed scientist, Mad's resident freeloader, Miss Buckingham Stussy. So I said in one of the previous videos where I talked about this, was a video I did last week about Stussy, where I pointed out the fact that I kind of thought that it was Miss Bucking that came up with the concept of cloning. And I'm like leaning toward like, maybe not her, because it says that she was a freeloader, but it also says that she was a resident freeloader scientist, but she was a self-proclaimed scientist. And the fact that I pointed out that on Rox's crew, they would have needed some form of a doctor. And while I'm sure, Kaido was pretty tough and Big Mom was pretty tough, the lead balloon scenario and stuff like that, I did point out that given how many times Lin would have given birth during the time frame that she would have been on the rocks as pirates, even if it was just a couple of times, it still would have been, an issue, that she probably would need someone there to help with that, to help make sure that the baby was healthy and everything, and to just make sure that everything was fine after the birth. And I'm sure that, that's possibly where Miss Bucking came in. And I'm talking about, she's Miss Bucking, and then Stussy is Stussy. But, my thought was she was the doctor on the crew, and then when they disbanded after what happened at God Valley, eventually Miss Bucking ended up with Mads. And it may have ended up being that, she's a self-proclaimed scientist, but she was also a pirate, and she also had a lot of skill probably when it comes to battle at that point in time to a degree. So she may have also been brought on as some form of security, but also she's a scientist and everything, and that's why she was brought on to Mads and everything. And Dufeld may have spun it to the government of like, she's doing penance for what she did. She's trying to make up for what she did as a pirate on the on the Rocks crew or whatever. So yeah. But we'll see what happens with that when we get hopefully more flashbacks, which I'll get to in a moment. But my thought is, so she's the freeloader, and it's just like, well, if you're going to be here, you at least have to contribute something to this beyond just like, I guess, like having a gun and protecting us, which isn't exceedingly necessary because we have all of these weapons that these three dinguses over here are building in regards to Judge, Caesar, and Queen. Or whatever Queen's name was at the time. But given what we see, I'm pretty sure that she was a scientist in her own right to a degree, and maybe she was the one that kind of came up with the idea of cloning technology, and then they used her genetics as the basis for cloning Stussy, and that's where that came from. Now we do have it that Miss Bucking says that she can, that Vegapunk can prove that Weevil is Whitebeard's son. She also still just wants all of the money that was left from Whitebeard. She's just like, Vegapunk can prove this. If we go to Egghead Island, he can prove that Weevil is Whitebeard's son. Also, give me all of the money that Whitebeard had. It's like, my money, my baby, my money, my baby, my money, my baby. It's like, It's like the old joke of like, guys held up at gunpoint and it's just like your money or your life. I'm thinking it over. Hold on. Um, um, but that's what popped into my head there. She's just like, well, I want to save my baby, but I want the money too. So give me money. Because of course, balking is fine. That's where that's coming from. That it means fine or penalty, which I just find hilarious because it's just like she wants all this money, and she was the freeloader. So that's what she was referred to as in the data card, or at least that might get adjusted depending on what the translation gets shifted to. But it was freeloader at the moment, and it's just like, huh, interesting. This is going to turn out very interesting in the end. But my thought is that she offered her genetics to be cloned, and that's how they got Stussy. And then maybe Bakhtin had a bit of a relationship with her as like her mother figure type of a thing. So don't really know too much else about that. It may have just ended up being that that was the case, but it may also be that she didn't have much of a connection to Stussy, and then she ended up wanting to because Weevil is 35 years old, I think, if I remember correctly. I think Weevil is 35. Yeah, Weevil is 35, and depending on what age we ever get on Stussy, then either Bakhtin had Weevil beforehand, either before she joined Mads, or while she was in Mads, she happened to get her hands on some of Whitebeard's genetics, and then that's how she made Weevil, and he's a weird botched, combination clone of her and Whitebeard, which is a possibility, but we don't know. He's got all those scars. Also, I did state that he's had to have someone like sew him up and take care of him after fights and stuff like that when he was getting stronger and everything when he was growing up. So I'm sure that that would result in Miss Bakhtin being the one to take care of him in that regard. So yeah, my thought is, she leaves the Rocks Pirates after it gets, destroyed. She joins Mads, and then through that time frame, she ends up getting, learning all of this other stuff about, additional things about science and cloning and everything like that. To the little bit of the Vegapunk and satellite stuff that we find out. So the cover story, we find out that Vegapunk was awarded the Ebel Peace Prize for making the GP flower. It's a flower that blooms in gunpowder, that will grow in gunpowder, where gunpowder has been put. So obviously the Ebel is a reference to the Nobel Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize. There's also Nobel Prizes for literature and science and things like that. But it's based off of the Nobel Peace Prize in this case, which was originally founded by Alfred Nobel way back. The story, and I don't know if it's 100% true. So Nobel was the one who invented dynamite, and a relative of his with the same last name had died, and he saw the obituary, and everybody thought it was him that had died. And it's just like how horrible of a person he was because he made dynamite, and that was his lasting legacy. And he's just like, oh no, I don't want that as my legacy. Again, I don't know how much of this is true, but then he, founds the Nobel Prize back in 1901, and it goes into all these different prizes for, as I said, for peace, for literature, for science, for a bunch of these other things that he wanted to, that he uses his money to promote. And that's kind of more what he's known as now, but part of it did come from, a lot of that came from dynamite and whatever else was made with his, explosives. So generally a Nobel Prize is for outstanding contributions to peace, arms reductions, international cooperation, and organizations contributing to peace and human rights contributions to peace. So what they're basically saying in the thing is that he made these tanks and this gunpowder and these flowers that will grow in different areas, which is a reference to a lot of the times after wars, there's lots of devastation done to all of these different areas. And a lot of the times it's very hard for any type of plant life to grow there. And it stays as like desolate landscapes for a long period of time until eventually there's enough, enough rain and erosion to get rid of a bunch of the other chemicals that are now in the ground, so it's exceedingly hard for anything to grow there. And so I looked up what would be the flower that can grow in the harshest condition, and that came out as purple sassafrag. don't know exactly if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm sorry. It is referred to as the hardest plant in the world, is in the flower that can grow in very inhospitable areas and conditions. They tend to grow in the Arctic tundra and stuff like that. They're these pretty little purple flowers, but they can grow in lots of different, very, very harsh conditions, where there's very little water or very little nutrients in the soil. These things can still grow there. But the other thing that I think that these gunpowder flowers are referencing are poppies. And no, I'm not referring to the poppies that are in the Wizard of Oz, where it's Dorothy and the Cowardly Lion fall asleep because the poppies make them sleepy. It's not that. So, way back in World War One, after all the fighting finished, there ended up being all these different battlefields, the Western Front, all these different places in France and Germany and stuff like that, where there were these, this huge battlefields where the trenches had been and everything like that. And it was very, very hard for anything to grow there. And what did end up growing there were poppies. And so the cultural reference and significance for poppies is that during the Napoleonic Wars and of course during the 19th century, so the 1800s, these poppies would end up magically growing around the bodies of the fallen soldiers on what seemed to be on barren land. And those poppies still to this day are considered a flower in honor of veterans, of the fallen, and of other service people and stuff like that. Even here in the United States, those are still a reference. We still have poppies that you wear, or that can wear on different, Veterans Day and Memorial Day and stuff like that. And in Europe, they do the same thing. I know at one point in time, I watched a documentary about like the Tower of London. And at one point in time, I know that they had like a big art exhibit where it was like all of these different poppies just like flowing out of the tower and all over this grass area outside of the tower that were just so beautiful. And it's all of these different, like, I think they're like glass poppies with real ones too. And like at one point, this was several years ago, so Queen Elizabeth was still alive at the time, and she like goes through the field and like sees all of these different poppies. And she herself had served in World War II. So her having this reverence for like what the poppies represent and everything for all these people that died and such like that in those different battles. And that's what I think the gunpowder flower is referencing, is poppies in that regard. We find out that the Seraphim do not have exceedingly smart programming, and the fact that they will still attack the Vegapunks, because both S-Shark and S-Hawk both attack one of the Vegapunk satellites, because S-Shark attacks Edison and S-Hawk attacks Lilith. They're both stopped. I mean, Edison is saved by Sanji, and then Zoro stops S-Hawk and everything, and takes that attack and stops him and everything, and like pins down S-Hawk and stuff, so they're able to get out the order for the Seraphim to stop attacking. But yeah, no, the Vegapunk needs to work on reprogramming these guys a little bit to put in the code of, I will not attack the Lavosphere, I will not attack any of the Vegapunk satellites, and I don't know, I will not attack anyone that Vegapunk declares to be an ally. Because if Vegapunk declares that the Straw Hats, the Straw Hat Luffy and his crew are our allies, that you will not attack them no matter who gives you that command, whether it be me or like Vegapunk's the only one that can override that command. It's like, oh, you are not to attack any of the Straw Hats or their ship until I tell you to. Until like I myself, main Stella Body, give you that order or rescind that order. Even if the Gorosei tell you to do it, you're not supposed to do it. So we get that. And then the other thing with that is we do see that Lilith does seem to have some form of compassion or care for her fellow fellow satellites, because when she thinks that Edison got hurt, she's like, oh my god, Edison, and then like Sanji's like, here he is, he's fine. Hi. And she's like, oh yay, Edison, you're okay, thank god. So we do see that she has some form of compassion. Yeah, we saw her like arguing back and forth with Shaka a lot so far, but that could just be their dynamic, like two siblings that argue back and forth, where it's just like, but mom said that I could do it. no, Lilith, stop. You know, that type of a dynamic. And then Lilith and Edison may have a slightly different dynamic, where maybe she sees Edison more as like the little brother and stuff like that. So she may have more of that. Not that she probably wouldn't be concerned if like Shaka got hurt, but it's that same type of like sibling concept. Um, and I just had a very strange idea. Huh. Well, that's strange. My dad has 6 siblings, 3 girls, and then my dad has 6 siblings, so it's him and the 2 boys, and then the 3 girls. And I'm just like, there are 6 Vegapunk satellites. Oh no, no. Um, 6 siblings is not that odd, or 6. You know, or there's 6 of them all together is not that odd. So we get 5 siblings and there's 6 of them all together. But yeah, that funny thing that popped into my head. But moving on to the last bit of the chapter, where we find out about a Gorosei that's on his way, a special guest that's on his way. So we finally get a name for one of the Gorosei, and it is the one that has had like the white dreadlocks and everything. And he has like the scar going across his head. And we find out via the Oda box that we got with him that he is the highest authority in the world, one of the 5 elders, or the Gorosei, Saint J. Garcia Saturn. Well, we finally got a name for one of them. I know that they all have like nicknames in the community and stuff like that, which is just kind of fun. But so I wanted to break down a little bit for like what the name references are coming from, or at least kind of what I think they're coming from. So J, so English, it's short for names that begin with J, like James and Jason and stuff like that. Usually J or JA names and stuff like that. And such. And it's kind of in honor of the founding father, John Jay, whose last name was just J-A-Y, the same way it's spelled here. There was a surname derived from the Jaybird. So J is also a reference to Jaybird. So there's a possibility that like a bird is somewhere in like the character's name for the Gorosei might be part of their names, but I don't know. Because like a Jay or a blue jay or something like that. And then also in Indian and Hindu or Hindi, J is also Jay is also short for the masculine form of Jaya. I don't know if that's going to result in anything. I don't think so, but there's a possibility there. I just wanted to point that out because that came up when I was looking up the name. I wanted to throw that in there. And then Garcia. So in Spanish, Garcia is a very common surname throughout Spain and Portugal and the Americas and the Philippines and everything like that, for different areas that were settled by Spain and Portugal. And it's also a common first name at times as well during in the medieval era. And it may also just be a reference to the musician Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead. I just wanted to throw that in there because I heard Garcia and it was Jay Garcia and my mind jumped to Jerry Garcia and I'm just like, huh, well, I'm throwing that in there. And then I also wanted to point out the fun fact of Jerry Garcia back in 1987 was the first person to have a dedicated, the first musician to have a dedicated ice cream flavor by Ben and Jerry's named after them, and that was the Cherry Garcia flavor. And I had thought about, can I do a video where I just try to name all of the other Gorosei after different ice cream flavors? And I'm like, I don't think I can make that work. I thought about it. I looked through the Ben and Jerry's list of flavors, and I'm just like, no, I don't think I can make this work. I'm not going to try this. I'll mention it, but I'm not going to try it. I was like, I don't think so. I just thought it seemed funny at the time. And then the last thing is Saturn. So Saturn, obviously with the ancient weapons, there's references there to Uranus, Uranus and Neptune, and and Pluton and stuff like that, and Poseidon and everything. That there's references there. So Saturn, you know, one of the 9 planets, 8 planets. Sorry, Pluto. Um, and it's also the Roman god of agriculture, believed to have ruled the earth during the age of happiness and virtue. It is a counterpart of the Greek god Kronos. And of course, with astronomy, it's the 6th planet in the order from the sun. And of course, Saturn just made me think of Sailor Saturn from Sailor Moon because, well, me. Um, Actually, Sailor Saturn is one of the ones that I actually have a figurine of over here on my shelf, but I'm not going to get it now. She's also a sailor. She's also referred to as the Sailor Scout of Destruction. So I don't know exactly how much of a Sailor Moon fan Oda is. I was trying to think about like the only thing that vaguely even seems like something that would be like a Sailor Moon reference is Reiju's transformations during Whole Cake Island. But even then, it's like her brothers and her are based off of like the Power Rangers setup, so it's not quite the same thing for how they transform. Um, but I was just like, I don't know if they're gonna put anything out with that. I know that Saturn was also like a very well, within Kronos, that counterpart, it was a very violent god, a very violent titan. So we'll see how that goes. Um, but yeah, there's some other bits that happen in the chapter, but not too much that I wanted to point out. We don't see Bonnie or Kuma or Vegapunk. Vegapunk states to be having gone missing at the end of the chapter, so we'll see how that goes. Also, we know that the Saint J. Garcia Saturn is on his way to Egghead Island with Kizaru, being escorted by Kizaru. So we'll see how that ends up working out. I I don't think that as a fan base we're gonna get lucky enough. It's like, okay, we got Stussy as an ally at the moment because she wants to protect Vegapunk because she, has, an affinity for Vegapunk. She has affection for him. She wants to keep him safe. She cares about him. Okay, I will buy that. That's the ally that was on the island. I'm fine. We still don't know who turned off the dome. I'll let other people work on figuring that out until it's explained. But we have that. With this Gorosei, I don't think we're going to get lucky enough as an audience to have it be that he shows up and ends up being an ally. I highly doubt that because unless he does like this full 180 where like, because, well, he's not part of the Don Quixote family, and the only other celestial dragons that we've seen so far that seem to have any form of like wanting to improve upon anything are the Don Quixote family, and that was we see that with Milzigard throughout what happens at Reverie and everything, which I just watched, and it was so satisfying getting to see Charlos whacked in the face. My mom got to see that episode, and I'm like, just watch this. Bam! That made me happy. But also homing. And those are the only ones so far that we've seen, and they were from the Don Quixote family. I have a whole theory that, like, the monkey family that Luffy and Garp and Dragon are a part of are, like, also descendants of a celestial dragon family that left a long time ago, but that's not canon. Or until that's ever explained, it's not canon. And it's not quite headcanon, it's just a theory. But one of the other things is I don't think we'd be lucky enough to have it be that one of the Elder Stars, one of the Gorosei, could actually be wanting to help the Straw Hats, help Vegapunk. I don't see that happening. I honestly don't. It would be interesting if it did, but I'm not expecting it to. I'd be very surprised if that ended up being the case, or if he ended up like allowing them to escape. But I'm pretty sure it's like they're sending him there because he's a Gorosei, and if he gets there, then supposedly, as far as they're aware, all of the Seraphim should obey him over anybody else. So, unless Vegapunk lied to the world government, lied to the Gorosei, and said, oh yes, the Seraphim, you are at the top of their command structure. That is exactly how it will work. They will obey anything you tell them, even if I tell them not to. And unless it is that Vegapunk like just straight up lied to them, or Shaka or whatever just straight up lied to them, and like in actuality just like, no, Vegapunk is where it stops, that Vegapunk is the highest authority, then we're in trouble. Because it's like he shows up, he gets the Seraphim, if, you know, the Garza show up and they get the Seraphim, then they can just send the Seraphim after the Straw Hats or after whoever the heck they want, or bring them there, and then the Straw Hats just have to fight them anyway. Although I'm sure, you know, Zoro would be fine with having to fight S-Hawk, but you know, maybe Jinbei would be okay with fighting himself and a couple of other bits or whatever. But I don't know. So we'll see what happens with that. That's what we have. I thank you for watching. Still ain't gonna see me put on lipstick because I'm not good with it, and I don't even know if this is a good color for me or whatnot. I found this in our bathroom, and I'm like, yeah, I'll use that as a prop. So that's what I have. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. And I hope you enjoy the video. Bye.